Okay, we should be live.
Just quickly, which pages is this going to be on right now? It's on Kipper Stream, it's on Kipper Central, and it's
YI and Kipper Central.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go. Hello and welcome to a special live edition of the Kipper Stream. My name is Damien Heads, aka the Young PJW, and today we'll be debating a very important motion in Young Independence, the youth wing of UKIP, to decide whether the chairmanship of YI should be extended from 1 year to 2 years. For anyone who doesn't know, our current chairman is a young man by the name of Nathan Riding, our youth affairs spokesman, and who also happens to sit on the NEC. So, to debate this motion, joining me in the 2-year corner, I have the ever-charming and notoriously incontroversial Sebastian Cheek. Hello, Sebastian.
Thank you very much. Hi there, how are you?
While in the 1-year corner, we have the young rosy cheeks Kipper himself. That's right, it's Mr. Reese Coombes.
Good to be here.
Hello, Reese.
Reese Nat West Coombes.
Oh, God, it's getting saucy already. Okay, so I thought I'd start this thing off and would have a quick minute introduction from the both of you where you can explain just a little bit about yourself and then state your case as to why you think the chairmanship should either be extended or not at all. So why don't we start with you, Seb?
Perfect. Well, I've only got a minute for this. I'm sure most of you know me. I'm the treasurer of Young Independence. I just want to say in this minute, we have a tremendous opportunity here to be more professional, to really give ourselves the ability to achieve radical change. And I think that's what we all want out of the youth wing of the party. And I also think it's important that this change will make us more respected amongst the main party. Now, let's just think about what that means. I've only got a minute, so I've got to try and pick the best argument. The best argument I would say here is, as we all know, on paper, you've got 1 year where you can do what you want. But in terms of effectively how long you have, it's closer to 6 to 8 months. Now, the first few months, you're trying to put through your changes. You're trying to get people together. You're trying to do the other elections for all the other positions. And in the last few, you're trying to get re-elected. 6 to 8 months is not enough for us to achieve the radical change that we want. If we want to really put through change, if you want to be respected, if you want to be consistent, professional, we need to go for something a bit longer, and 2 years is really the least we can go for.
Okay, that's great. So why don't we go to you now, Reese?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the question is quite simple. Is it working at the moment? And I think the answer is yes. The system we have elected last year a fantastic chairman, a fantastic deputy, if I do say so myself, and of course a fantastic executive council. Over that year, we achieved so much. We brought the membership at one point from around 800 to over 2,000, almost tripling our membership. As Seb knows, finances went from almost bankruptcy to ridiculous amounts of money, which we could use to help YI members get about, which we could use to drive change in the party. All of these things happened because we have a fantastic chairman in Nathan, right? And of course, a treasurer. Yeah, I'll give you that, Seb, right?
Thank you.
But
thank you.
He only had a 1 year term. And in that term, he achieved so much. And because he did so well, he was re-elected onto a second term. Now, any good chairman will be elected for a second term because that good chairman will get the support of the membership. The membership can tell when a chairman is doing well, like Nate was. But if we elect a chairman who is terrible, doing an awful job, lying to the members, not doing what he's meant to do, even being corrupt, right? We can remove that chairman after just 1 year and put in place somebody else. And because there is no limit on how long you can be YI chairman, you could quite easily have a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year term.
Okay, wrap it up now.
Okay, well, that brings in everything Seb said. It's that simple.
Okay. So why don't we move on to some questions then?
Can I comment on that? And perhaps he could comment.
Oh, yeah, feel free to. Feel free to counteract at any point.
Sure. Well, let me just ask you this, Reese. You said a lying chairman in a 2-year term, you hypothecated that a lying chairman in a 2-year term would be able to get away with it. Potentially, if they lied in the first 6 months, they'd have another 18. They could keep on lying. Are you familiar with the concept of recall?
I am.
If we had a chairman who was truly lying, truly being fraudulent, truly doing a bad job, we'd get rid of him. And so this argument of you need 1 year to be more democratic and more accountable, quite frankly, just doesn't stand. If we got just 5% of the members, just 5%, not 50, not 20, 5% of the members to say that they weren't happy with what a treasurer was doing, it would go to a general election and we would get rid of them. The question is not about democracy, even though I don't think that's going to be changed at all. It's about professionalism. It's about giving our chairman the ability to push for radical change. Our chairmen need to make ambitious promises when they stand on their manifesto, and we need to give them every ability to be able to achieve those ambitious promises. Only by giving them 2 years can they really push for big changes. Patrons, youth affairs spokesmen, a complete change of our finances, action days, elections. These massive changes can only happen when you give people the time and the resources and the support. And the 2-year term gives them that. Wouldn't you agree?
Not in the slightest. I agree. We need all of those things. Of course we do. You're right. You know, those things are what makes why drive change. That's how we get places. But you don't need a forced 2-year term to do that. And in terms of recall, let's look at an example last year. Those of you who've been in YI for a little while will remember last year, the Executive Council of YI made some very controversial decisions relating to who was and who wasn't a member of YI Hub. On that issue, we had the support of about probably 5 members of YI. Yet still, the membership could not recall us because recall is incredibly difficult. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't happen. If there was a case of somebody pocketing every penny YI gets, of course, they would probably be recalled, right? But I'm talking about the chairman who sits at home all day, doesn't do a lot, maybe doesn't steal money, doesn't get quite that far, but sits at home, sits on his ass, barely does anything, barely gets the name out, makes a few stupid comments, right? But not enough. That chairman would be in place for 12 months twice, right? 24 months. Now, if we have a chairman who does that, but doesn't get recalled, but is only in place for 1 year, after 1 year, we can replace them with somebody fantastic who sees that and goes, you know what, I could do a better job. I could go out and speak at branches. I could go out and raise thousands of pounds for YI. I could go out and organise action days. We can elect that person, give that person a year term. And furthermore, if that person does well, we can elect them again and again and again. And it keeps going. And you're ensuring that at every
But they have to run election campaigns every single time, don't they? And that cuts into party time, it cuts into their own time, it cuts into their ability to really push for YI's interests. So every single time that they're doing an election, they're wasting 3, 4, maybe even 5 months of time when they're not fully putting all their efforts into YI. I mean, that's not good for our party, is it?
Can I just insert one question here? Can either of you confirm what percentage of votes you need for a vote of no confidence?
I believe it's 5%. I'm pretty sure it's 5% of the total membership, which, if I'm familiar, it triggers an election. It doesn't get rid of the chap. It triggers an election.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Do fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate.
Yeah.
Shall I move on?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'll ask you a question, Sebastian. As a member of the executive, what is it about having an extra election that you want to avoid so much?
No, I think it's fantastic. I think if you're trying to avoid it, you'd say no elections whatsoever. You've got parties, you've got youth wings in Europe, Eurosceptic youth wings like National Rally and Liga, who have between 3 and 5 years. It's not a question of avoiding elections. It's a question of professionalism, pushing the argument forward, getting more done, being more ambitious with your targets. Like I said, if there was a real problem, if people really weren't happy with what's going on, they'd recall you. I think having a 2-year term just makes the election more weighty. You know what I mean? If you say you've got 2 years, the campaign's going to be longer, the effort's going to be higher, the debates are going to be greater, and it really matters because instead of we can just it'll only be a year, it's 2 years. And I think that will be good for our democracy. It'll be good for scrutiny. I think we'll have a better campaign, and we'll have debates such as these, and the builders won't be around, Nate?
Well, to counteract that, I have a question for you, Reese, which is... Can
I respond to Seb first? Is that right?
Yeah, no, I want to hear what he says.
My question pretty much asks the same thing, so you can do it at the same time if you like. So I was going to ask you, Reese, isn't it right that YI, being a national branch, unlike a local UKIP branch, requires a more stable leadership to keep a certain sense of stability and continuity? Thank you.
It does. YI needs a stable leadership. That's why we have an executive council and a national council, which is a far more complex structure that enables far more quick change to happen, rather than having in-person committee meetings that cause all sorts of difficulties getting to them. We have online meetings. We have so many different things in place to ordinary branches already, right? And what Seb is saying, the only argument really I've heard Seb make so far is, oh, aren't these elections awfully inconvenient? Well, yes, elections are inconvenient, but elections are necessary
What
to
a
give
straw man.
the voice. And of course,
I think that's ridiculous.
Yes, they take up time. They do, but they have to. Because if you're not taking the time to tell the members what you're planning, if you don't have the time to talk to the members and give them your plan for the coming year, you shouldn't be YI chairman.
Reece, let me ask you this. If you had to pick a scale from less ambitious to more ambitious, which would you want the promises of the incoming chairman to be? Would you want them to be more ambitious or less ambitious?
I think that's pretty obvious.
You'd want
as they can be.
Fantastic. And you'd agree that we should give them everything we possibly can to achieve those, such as 2 years, such as
harm our democracy, of course.
How's it harming? Are we getting rid of recall?
No, we're having less elections, giving the members a say less often.
We're wasting less of our time by having less campaigning
Elections
pressure.
are a waste of time.
Elections are absolutely not a waste of time. I mean, for somebody who's campaigning on democracy, I mean, why are you going for 1 year? Why not go for 6 months? Why not go for 1 month?
We have to strike the right balance.
We do. Okay. So you're not in favour of, for example, a second referendum, because that's another election. You're not in favour of a second election?
Because that is
You'd agree that there's some time that you need to wait, wouldn't you, Reece?
For what, a second referendum?
So the argument with a lot of Remainers make, you don't want a second referendum because you're against democracy. No, I'm saying there needs to be a lengthy time. And obviously it's arbitrary at the end of the day. There's not a lot of difference between 6 months and a year. There's not a lot of difference between 1 year and 2 years. I'm just making the rather pragmatic argument that we need to give people more time to achieve their promises. And I think 2 years exactly where that compromise lies.
But of course, any good chairman can make their changes over 2 years. Because any good chairman can be elected twice. And if they are really wanting to make that change, if they are as ambitious as we're talking about, which
sometimes it's not always in their hands now, is it, Reece?
I know that Nathan is, and if they want to make these great changes, which hopefully they do, and obviously we know Nathan does, right? If that's going to happen, then they can put in their first manifesto before the first year, I plan to make these changes and stand for re-election in the second year to see them through. And that's fantastic. We should encourage that. That should be great. But why not halfway through say to the members, okay, you've had a year of my pledges, you've had a year of my policies. What do you think? You like them? You want to see it through? Great. Elect me again. Also, I've thought this new idea. What do you think? If you don't like it, don't elect me. If you do, re-elect me. And it's that simple. And by giving the members that say, you are ensuring that at every step of the way, the members are the ones making the decisions, not...
Well, Reece, I think this is fantastic. I think the idea of democracy is fantastic. So what I don't understand is why you're only campaigning for 1 year terms. You're not campaigning for 6 months. Because every argument you've just made can easily be applied to 6 months. It can easily be applied to 4 months, 3 months, 1 month. Why a year?
Why a year? It's quite simple. Because a year is the right amount of time to go through everything in the political process. So you have local...
Why can't you do that in 6 months?
Pardon?
Why can't you do that in 6 months? If we truly value democracy, if we truly value accountability, democracy, if we're not afraid of elections, why aren't you campaigning for 6 months?
Because I think every WIRE chairman should go through certain things. For example, I think local elections are something that a WIRE chairman should do in their term. You have local elections once a year. That's a good point. That's a good thing to choose your term around.
But Reece, as you rightly said, if they're truly good at what they do, they could survive that election and then go into the local elections. I mean, if they're truly good, if they care, they've got a new idea, every argument you're making can very easily be applied to 6 months, and yet you haven't said a word about that.
Because one of my other arguments that you'll have seen in my email was, there's nothing wrong with the system we have. We know it works. We know from years of trying it, from years of looking at it, that 1 year works. Changing it by increasing it, or yes, by decreasing it, and actually decreasing it would be bad for the reasons you've said, right? We know that changing it is a risk. And obviously we have to take risks. That's true. But the current system is working so fantastically well.
At the moment.
Can I just butt in for a second here, Reece?
By all means.
Yep.
What would you make to the point that there are many other youth wings of political parties that have longer than 1 year, including successful parties like Lega and the AFD?
They have entirely different structures. The way they work is totally different to the way we work. And if we want to model ourselves...
How's it different?
Okay, so the way they structure themselves, quite often they have leaders rather than chairmen. They tend to have far more far more structure in terms of actually having paid staff. Many of them have over 10 paid staff working for them. Their membership is far more spread out, and actually they tend to have far more spread out regional branches which have a different type of input to what our regional chairmen have. The way they work is entirely different because European politics is so totally different to British. We see that in every election, and we have to change ourselves because of that.
But from my understanding, even the UK youth parties have longer terms. I mean, Young Labour, for example, is what, 2 years? I'm not sure on the Young Conservatives, but it seems like we're the anomaly by having 1 year. And I think we have to ask ourselves, why is almost every other youth wing doing this? They're doing this because they know that when a chairman comes in, you want them to plan for the future. You want them to plan for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, even more ahead. And the way you do that is you say, look, we're going to give you a certain amount of security. And that's why we don't hold elections every single month, so that you can achieve the ambitious promises that you want to do. The question quite simply here that I think we have in front of us is, do we want to be aiming high or aiming low? If we want to aim high, we need to say to our incoming chairman, whoever it may be, you can achieve whatever you want. We're going to give you every restraint you can. Cross us and we will recall you. We will get rid of you. But we want to achieve truly great things. We want to be known locally. We want to be known amongst the main party. And we want to make an impact across the country. That's why we're holding action days. And that's why we're getting our name out there. If we want to be truly radical, a truly radical youth wing, we need to increase the time.
If we want to be a truly radical youth wing, we need to copy what the other parties do. I'm not sure that argument follows, Seb. UKIP is different to the other parties in every single way. We are totally different precisely because we are radical. And we are radical also in our internal democracy. UKIP is probably, by quite a way, the most internally democratic party in the UK, right? And if we are to carry on being that radical and that democratic, then we have to look at why we're radical. And the reason we're radical is because we value democracy. We value our members. We think that our members are the best people at every step of the way to choose the future of our party and its organisations. And I think that should follow for Young Independents.
It's another argument for 6 months then, isn't it? I mean, every argument nothing that's being said here is unique to 1 year. It's all saying that it needs to be sort of decreased, and we don't have that option on the ballot. I reckon if it was a three-way debate with one person saying that we should lower it, then your tune would change quite quickly, if I do say so myself.
No, I don't agree. I think my argument is very clear that we have the right situation as we are at the moment. We have a lot of democracy in that members can choose every year. Members can recall their chairman. We have that system in place. Why change it? Why lower it? There is no need to lower it. The members have an important...
Well, how would you respond to some of my points? Because I didn't just say it would be nice to have 2 years, wouldn't it? I made specific points. I said it would be more professional. I said we could give our people our chairman.
Okay, wait, stop there. Let me move this on because this moves into the exact same territory that you're going into now.
By all means, go for it.
So the next round I want to be is the Jordan Peterson round.
I'm looking forward to this. Brilliant. What is it?
So this is where I will want to get both of you to steel man each other's arguments. I want both of you to provide the best summary possible, what you think your opponent's main reasons are why they support their position. So why don't we start with you, Reese?
A steel man. Okay.
Do you mean straw man?
Steel man. No, steel man is the opposite of straw man, where you try and provide the best argument from your opponent's side.
Is it like an actual best argument? I don't understand the concept.
You're basically what you think the main reasons are why he thinks the way he is.
So I'm giving my reasons as to why people should agree with Seb.
You're giving what you think are Seb's reasons for why it should be extended to 2 years, why he thinks that.
Oh, okay, I'm with you. Well, I think Seb's reasons are pretty obvious. He stated them very well. It's that why I need to be professional, why I need to be secure in its future, why I need to elect a chairman on the basis that they have enough time during that term to elect them. Of course, that's not taking into account any democratic checks during that process, but that's Seb thinking. Okay,
well, I was just going to ask to you then, so why is he wrong? But you kind of almost already done that. But do you want to finish up a little bit more?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think he's wrong because, as I've said, two years is very possible without forcing it. You know, if you want a 2-year term, that's very easily done. Nate has done it, and he's done it without a lengthy, confusing, awful, terrible election. He's done it with a simple election where nobody else opposed him because we all back everything he wants to do. We've seen what he's done. It's been proven. We want it to continue, so no one stood against it. And had anyone stood against him, he would have won by a landslide.
Okay. So how about you, Seb? What is your opponent's best argument?
It seems to me that the argument that's being made is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think, look, at the moment, you're absolutely fine. I mean, at the moment, we have a chairman who's doing very well. Our finances are growing, if I say so myself. Our membership's growing. We're doing very well, and this is fantastic. But let's just turn our mind back. What is it, a year and a half, maybe? It's not always this case. It's not always doing just fine. There are many things that can change. And I think when we're putting in policy like this, which is changing our constitution, we need to be thinking to ourselves, what can we do to make the job of the chairman better? What can we do to get the best possible chairman, to get the best possible policies through? And it seems to me the best way to do that would be to give them every piece of support they could possibly have to achieve real change. And that seems quite simple to me. The only way to really do that is to have a 2-year term, or perhaps even more. I mean, I'd probably go for, I think there's an argument that could be made for 3 years or more, to be honest.
Right, okay. Do you want to respond in any form to that, Reese?
Yeah, I do. I think Seb's actually a really strong point there. A really good point is, if we go back a year and a half and we look at the situation we were in, we had a chairman, Jamie Ross Mackenzie. Now, Jamie had his supporters, Jamie had his opponents. But I think if we look back on it now, the broad consensus is Jamie was not doing a good job at that time towards the end of his term. Okay, he was doing very little. His exec were doing very little. There was nothing much going on in YI, and all he was doing was arguing with the members about stupid things and calling them names, right? He didn't really get anywhere, and that seems to be the broad consensus. Now,
but we wouldn't be changing that, would we? The argument you're going to make in a second is that, you know, putting him in for 2 years as opposed to 1 would be bad, and you're absolutely right. But Jamie tried to avoid an election. Instead of holding a democratic election, which he should have, he put YI under special measures. Now, you and me would both agree that we should perhaps change that. Perhaps if it's not really in need of special measures, we shouldn't be doing that. But neither of us are going to change that. So it seems bringing that up is almost counterproductive.
No, because if you look at what position Jamie was in, Jamie, it was his time to have an election. He'd been in power a year, and he put in place special measures to prevent an election happening so he could stay in power. Right?
And we wouldn't be changing that, though, would we?
No, that's what happened. But what you're doing is you're taking away the need to put in special measures, because even though he's an unpopular chairman, he'll still have another 12 months left under your proposal. And the problem is, I know you're going to come out with recall. I know you're going to come out with recall.
Exactly.
We tried recalling him. We tried recall. You, I, Nate, we tried recalling Jamie, and it did not work.
Why didn't it work?
Because we couldn't get the numbers. We couldn't get the numbers to do it, even though...
Well, then that's anti-democratic then, isn't it?
What do you mean it's anti-democratic? Because 95%...
I mean, if you're truly saying that he was absolutely terrible, and I'm a firm believer that he was, then you should be able to get 5% of the members to agree with you. I mean that's just ridiculous. If we had a normal election and a general election in the country, and we said the recall procedure was 5%, we'd have no problem whatsoever if somebody was truly terrible. In terms of young independents, if somebody was really bad, we couldn't stand them, we'd get rid of them. We could get 5%. I mean, honestly, our email goes out and we get like a 50%, maybe even more contact ratio. If they're truly bad, if we truly don't like them, we'll get 5%. Now, the reason this doesn't apply to the Jamie situation is because under special measures, you can't recall anyway. I mean, he wasn't effectively the chairman under special measures. And as I've said earlier, nothing that anyone's saying here is going to change the special measures procedure. Perhaps we both agree that in future we should change that. Maybe, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, do we want to have ambitious policies for our party? With a 2-year term, you're giving future chairmen the support they need to be able to put these policies through. That's only a good thing. We want radical change. We want to be different. You're absolutely right. We don't want to be like a lot of these people, a lot of these youth wings. But when all of our friends in Europe, the Eurosceptic youth wings, are doing something one way, perhaps it's worth looking and saying, why are they doing this? What do they gain from it? And they've been doing extremely well. If you look at Euroscepticism in Europe and where it's been rising in the youth. And whereas here, it's been rising anywhere but the youth. So perhaps, just looking as an outsider, we should say, what are they doing that's right? And I'm not saying putting in 2-year terms is going to change everything, but perhaps it's a step in the right direction to achieve truly ambitious change. And that's what we all want here. We're the radical youth wing at the end of the day.
I've got 2 points on that. First of all, you're distracting from the point, right? We all agree. We all agree that the special measures thing Jamie did was wrong, right? There's no question of that. However, we tried to recall him and we couldn't recall him, okay? Because the recall measure is incredibly difficult. It will only work, really, if you've got a chairman who's going out stabbing babies, right? It's very difficult to recall a chairman, okay? There are reasons for that, because you can't recall a chairman for the slightest thing.
Well, you can't stab a baby, for starters.
Exactly, yes. But
I'm pro-life. That should make me laugh.
Yes. But the problem is, if you have a 1 year election, at that point with Jamie, had he not used the special measures, we could have removed him. And actually, he was still removed fairly quickly after special measures. It was a couple of months, right? A couple of months more than it should have been, but only a couple of months. Had he had that 2 year term, he wouldn't have even need to worry about special measures because he'd have had his position and his power for a further 12 months, right? Even though most of the members didn't like him. And the reason we couldn't reach that 5% was because YI Hub had such low engagement at that time. And actually, YI Hub has far more members now, so we'd be more likely to reach that 5%. But there's no saying that it's going to stay that way. Clearly, I hope it does, and I think it will for the time being. But we have to prepare for a future where that's not the case. And I think, had we had that 1 year term, we wouldn't have, had we kept the 1 year term, like we did, we got rid of Jamie and we got Nate. And what a fantastic situation that turned out to be.
We all like Nate, Reese.
I know. Had we had the 2 year term, we would have literally only just got rid of Jamie in the last few months. That's what situation we would have been in. How terrible would that be? And the second point I'd like to respond to is that you said that Euroscepticism is growing anywhere but the youth in the UK. And I don't agree. I agree, obviously, that in Europe there tends to be more Euroscepticism than in Britain. But actually, I think the demographic in Britain, which is mostly growing in Euroscepticism, is the youth. You look at the marches going on.
I'd agree.
If you look at Tommy's or Nigel's marches, it's young people going out and marching. If you look on the streets at UKIP stalls, there's more and more young people. You look at Leave.eu events, more and more young people.
I agree.
Who's supporting Brexit? It's young people. We are doing something right.
That's where you're wrong.
Getting the word out.
So what's that got to do with 1 year?
It's not got anything to do with 1 year. Seb made the point that young people aren't supporting Brexit in Britain or aren't Eurosceptic in Britain enough because we're not doing the same as the Eurosceptic youth wings by having the terms. So I'm making the point that actually the 2 year term is not the reason that we're different. And actually, with our 1 year term, despite our 1 year term perhaps, we are doing well in reaching out to the youth because the youth are backing us.
I see.
I mean, I could respond, but
I don't know of any other Eurosceptic youth wing that's tripled in size in the last year.
Well, we've got time if you want to respond.
I mean, it's very easy to triple when you've got 1,000 to go from 1,000 to 3,000, for example, than it is if you've got 40,000 to go from 40,000 to 120,000. So I think we should look in terms of real growth as opposed to nominal. What I would say is this: you're absolutely right in terms of the young people being on the stalls and going to the rallies and stuff, and that's always been the case because the youth are more interactivism and more energetic, and they get out there. You're absolutely right. And then you said it's the young people that are voting for Brexit, and all of the polling data says you're wrong in the UK. All the polling data says you're wrong. Sorry, you didn't really comment on Europe. But in Europe, the people who vote for Brexit, in terms of demographics, are the young people. In the UK, it's the elderly. And we would both agree we want to change that. We want more and more young people fighting hard. I'd make the case now that could be better achieved with a 2 year term, but I'll leave that out. The point is this: there is a model in Europe which is working. All the data says it is working. It might not be the 2 year term. It might be a number of other things. But this is surely a step in the right direction. If every other Eurosceptic youth wing in Europe is doing a 2 year term plus, I mean, what do we got here? The Flems are doing 2 years, the National Rally are 5 years in France, AFD 2 years, Liga 3 years, and we're still on 1 year. Why do they do that? Is it because, as you've said, they're afraid of democracy, they're afraid of elections? No, they say we need to be professional, we need to put ourselves across in a certain way, we need to have consistency with our message, we need to be ambitious. We need to move forward. We need to achieve the best we possibly can with 2 years. We need to give our chairman the ability to really want radical change. If somebody comes in and just puts through a bunch of policies which are nice and easy and nothing changes and everyone agrees with them and it's fantastic and nothing changes in a year, I mean, that's fine. And at the end of the day, we wouldn't be different to any other party, would we?
No,
the reason why it's different is because we go for truly radical change, because we want to change our youth wing, we want to change our party, we want to change our country. And only through truly radical action can we achieve that. That's why we need to increase the term. We need to give our chairman support.
Okay, let's get a fairly brief response from you.
Yes, we took radical action last year by electing Nate and I. And the radical change we brought out, we almost totally rewrote the constitution. We changed the executive council. We totally reshaped the vision of YI and the image of YI in the party and with the public. We increased our reach on social media. we got out and removed the leader, Henry Bolton. We are bringing about radical change in every way, every single day. YI is doing it, whether it be on a branch level, a regional, or a national level. YI is always bringing radical change. It doesn't matter that we've got a 1-year term. We could have a 10-year term or a 6-month term. YI will always bring radical change. And that won't change if we've got a 1-year term or a 2-year term. What will change is the direction of that radical term being determined by the members or being determined by a chairman who's already been in place for a year. And I think after a year, the members should have their say again on what the term should be and what the future of YI should be.
Okay, let's stop you there. I do want to get on to our members' questions.
Sorry, just a second. I've got a couple of people messaging me saying it's cut out. Can we just verify that it hasn't? I might be being silly here. We
okay,
good?
Let's have a look.
Oh, no, I think we're good.
Yeah, it might just be a couple of people having problems.
Okay.
I've not had any messages like that, so I think we're okay.
Are we good to carry on?
Sorry. Yeah, no, by all means. By all means. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, before I move on to my members' questions, I wanted to clear up with you, Sebastian, the thing about Nate and whether he would call an early election or not. Yeah.
So I've spoken to Nate about this. There are a few people who perhaps I've got a bunch of people messaging me saying it's fine now. A few people were worried that this might be slightly opportunistic. And I think in politics, you always need to be a bit worried and you always sometimes need to assume the worst. I think that's natural. I think we can trust Nate by now, but sometimes that's fine. Anyway, some people were worried that the referendum would go through, the 2-year campaign would win, for example, and then Nate would call an election. He'd win that because there's such support for him at the moment. Perhaps no one would even run against him, and then he'd be in for 2 years. Some people, including, if I say so myself, you, Damien, thought that could happen. I can say categorically, from what I've heard from Nate, and I'm sure he can verify this on the hub in a minute or when we're done, there won't be an election called before, I think it's the local elections and the leadership elections. So he has no plans to call a snap election. He has no plans to do anything dastardly that I know of, but I'm sure he'll confirm that in the hub. So if anybody was worrying that this was some sort of, keep Nate in power scheme, some sort of ploy, that's not the case. Some sort of push. That's not the case.
That only covers the next 2 months, not until December. I obviously would support Nate if he did call an early election. That goes without saying. That said, Nate was elected on a 1-year term. I would like to see. I've not actually, I've not considered this much before, but I would like to know that Nate will be staying in his position until December. And if he wishes to stand in December, that's fine. But if he's saying I'm not going to stand until after the leadership elections, well, that's only 2 months away. He needs to finish his term, and then obviously if he wants to restand, which I hope he does, he can restand, but he needs to finish his term like he was elected to.
Well, in the youth wing, just like in the country, we can have snap elections almost whenever we want. You could do it the day after. So it's not like I've heard something from him that says otherwise, but he would have the ability to do that. He said that he has no plans to do it in the near future. But really, I'm not Nate. You'd have to talk to him about this. But I can say categorically, before local elections and the leadership elections, there will not be anything. Pardon me. there will not be any election. And also, one thing that some people have asked me about is that if there is a referendum, if there is a 2-year term win, and we do have 2-year terms from here on out, Nate will only have 1 year. He will have to win another election before he's given an additional year. So that's not a debating point. That's just a point for clarity.
Yeah.
As far as I know. Don't shoot the messenger.
Okay, that's good.
I'd like to ask a question, actually, if that's all right. Or
yes.
you got a list?
Oh, no, please go ahead. As long as it's not too long, because I want to get the members' questions in as well, obviously.
I don't want to put you out of a job. So I'd like to talk about the youth affairs spokesman. Now, we've never, ever had this before, and it's absolutely fantastic. The idea that a young member will be on TV talking about youth issues once a month, once every few weeks, is absolutely fantastic. It's massive for the party. It's massive for youth representation in the country, and it's huge for young independents. The party has, and you'd agree, absolutely. The party has stepped down on a massive limb doing this for us. Our reputation used to be that we're a toxic group of people. There have been many conversations about shutting us down, but we've kept going, and that's fantastic. The party has trusted us like it's never trusted us before. I feel that if we have just a 1-year term, we won't be ruining that, but we might be hurting it a bit because the message, which could be so much more consistent, which would give so much more security to the main party, would be diluted. Let me explain. If we had a 2-year term, and if we had somebody clearly saying that this is what we're going to do, A, B, C, and D in my 2-year term, it gives the party 2 years of security. And any argument that we should get rid of youth affairs spokesman, if God forbid Gerald Batten gets voted out, or we have somebody else who's perhaps not pro-youth independence, any idea that we'd get rid of the youth affairs spokesman would be gone, because as we both agree, we need a youth affairs spokesman, whether we have Gerard in charge or anybody else. I feel that we might be calling that into jeopardy if we continue with a 1-year term. We want to give ourselves the security, give the party the security of knowing exactly what our message will be for 2 years. I'd just like to know your take on that.
Well, without meaning to call you out here, Seb, I do. I think you may have misunderstood Gerard's appointment, and I know Nate will back me up on this.
Go for it.
Nate was personally appointed to Youth Affairs spokesman. Now, let me finish. Nate
by all means.
Nate wanted, and obviously still wants, and we all still want, Gerard to appoint the Youth Affairs spokesman to the elected YI chairman, whoever that may be. So after Nate has gone in however many years, the next person will automatically become Youth Affairs spokesman. However, that's not currently what we've got. What we've got at the moment is Nathan is personally the Youth Affairs spokesman. Now, therefore, changing to a 2-year term doesn't actually make a difference to that. Okay, who Gerard has appointed is Nate as the personal Youth Affairs spokesman. So the entire argument you just made isn't really relevant. However, what I would say is we are still pushing, Nathan especially is pushing for that position to be closely intertwined with the Youth Affairs spokesman and YI chairman, so that whoever is elected is also the Youth Affairs spokesman. Now, if we want that to happen, we need the leadership of UKIP to know that that person will be very regularly and not toughly, that's very regularly and strictly scrutinised.
Rigorously.
By membership. Vigorously, that's even better word again.
I said rigorously, actually, not vigorously.
Rigorously and vigorously scrutinised by the YI membership, okay? And if we are to get anywhere near the leader offering that position to the elected YI chairman officially, then we need him to know that that position is very strictly scrutinised, very often, very thoroughly. And the best way of doing that is keeping the 1-year term, so that the person elected is checked every year. And if they're doing a great job, they're re-elected and they keep promoting the party message. If they're doing a terrible job, then they get scrapped and someone else replaces them.
Once again, the argument of 6 months comes to mind. Just on the clarification point that you made, first of all, at the moment, you're absolutely right. Nate is, supreme leader of Youth Affairs spokesman role. He will be in it. You could say indefinitely. However, everybody, including Nate personally, is pushing for it to be chairman equals Youth Affairs spokesman. Yeah. So unless there's some sort of dastardly change, or that doesn't happen, in which case I would be very personally annoyed, because that's not democratic, I don't feel.
Is Nate personally pushing for that?
You have to speak to him himself, but I've had conversations. Yeah, so I'm almost certain he is, but I can't speak for the man himself. It seems to me every argument you made after that was, we need to be more scrutinized. And then the argument again is, why not do 6 months? I mean, if you want all this scrutiny, which is fantastic, and I'm not feeling for elections, that's why I think we should have them. I've just got a message from Nate saying, yes, he is. If you want scrutiny, which we all do, we all love scrutiny. I don't hate scrutiny. I think it's fantastic. I want elections. But every argument you made can easily be applied to 6 months, and you haven't told me how it's different. You've said there might be general elections in one of the years, and that makes it different. I don't think that's really a substantial argument. If we love scrutiny, which of course we do, we love democracy, all that stuff, let's do 6 months.
Okay, I will let you respond to that briefly, but we do need to move on soon, Rhys.
Okay, we have proven time and time again that 1 year is a good term. It's long enough that you have the years we've been running YI on a 1-year term and succeeded amazingly in campaigning in the referendum, in the 2016 referendum, that is, campaigning in the 2015 general election, in Nate and I's term last year, and in Nate being re-elected this year, continuing to do a fantastic job. We know it works. We know that 1 year is a brilliant time to bring about change, to drive through your vision, while still remaining able to listen to the members and to be scrutinised by the members, and if necessary, to be sacked by the members. Now, we know it works. It's proven, it's tried, it's tested, it works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Oh, he's got a catchphrase now. That's good. It. Okay, let's move on. Questions from the members?
Yeah, let's have it.
Yes. Okay, so to you, Seb.
Yes.
a lot can change in a year. Shouldn't the chairman
Who's
be
it
kept
from,
more
sorry?
regularly? I don't actually know because I copied it straight into a Word document.
Okay.
Without the name.
Sorry, go on, go ahead.
I kept it just in case they wanted to remain anonymous. Okay, so a lot can change in a year. Shouldn't the chairman be kept more regularly accountable because of this? And also, if a YI chair has no term limit, why can't they be expected to win consecutive elections on their own merit?
Well said.
Absolutely. So a number of points there. I think the argument of scrutiny is important. Scrutiny is important. Democracy is important. Accountability is important. That's not really going to change with 2 years. It's really not going to change with 2 years. If we say we need more scrutiny, then you might very well be right, but then we might as well just go for the 6 month terms. I haven't heard a coherent argument about why we shouldn't do that. The argument here is not about having democracy or not having democracy. Everybody here is in favor of accountability. Everybody here is in favor of democracy. Everybody here is in favor of scrutiny. The argument here is, how do we make ourselves more professional? How do we make ourselves more ambitious? How do we make ourselves more radical? How do we build on the performance we have at the moment? We're doing very well. We're doing fantastic, but no one here would say we couldn't do even better. We need to give future chairman after Nate, people after that person, after that person, after that person. We need to give them all the support they possibly can by changing the constitution to allow them more time. Time is one of the most valuable resources you could possibly have in politics and in life, and we need to give them that power. Now, if there wasn't a recall, I would never support this motion ever. If there was some tyrant in charge who everyone was unhappy with, who put forward a bunch of stupid policies and didn't listen to their members, and we didn't have a recall, this would be absolutely terrible. And I would never go for this motion. But we have that in place. If someone is truly bad, if horrible, if we don't like them, not just us personally, but the members don't like him, we can get 5% of the members. We're not asking for 50. We're not asking for 80. We're not asking for 20. It's 5%. If we have real worries about democracy, if this person really isn't doing what they were voted on, and they didn't do what they said they're going to do in their manifesto, we recall them. Simple as that.
Okay, I'm going to have to move on because otherwise we won't get through the questions. I'm sorry, Reese.
How long do we have? Does it end at 12 or is it like 10 past 12?
Well, the vote starts at 12, so Nate wanted me to finish this at 12, so I'm going to try my best to finish at 12 if possible.
Sure.
So this is to you, Reese. Considering YI's turbulent past, which option provides greater stability for the future of YI?
Well, it's very simple. 1 year. The reason we had a turbulent past is because our chairman, our previous chairman, Jamie, that is, okay, so the main part of our turbulent past was under Jamie's term. We've had a turbulent past before that, of course we have, but when people refer to that, they tend to be referring to something that happened under Jamie, okay? Now, under Jamie, the main problem that happened was he kept his power for longer than he should have done. He was in 1 year, and he kept on to it for longer. Now, had we had a 2-year term, he would have been able to abuse his power for even longer. He wouldn't have even needed to go into the special measures or tackle or go through all of these different things because he would have already had that power granted to him by this referendum, right? Now, the most stable future is quite simply the one in which the members have the greatest power to keep their elected chairman in check. And what better way can you have to keep your chairman in check than once a year to vote on them? If you like them, you vote them in again. If you don't, you kick them out. It's that simple, and it works, and that's why it's stable, because we know that the members can every single step of the way check what's going on.
And briefly, how would you respond to that, Seb?
Well, the argument was made that if we don't like them, we can kick them out. I would say, to be devil's advocate here, you can't kick them out straight away unless you recall, which we both say that you can do for 1 or 2 years. Let's say that you don't like this person, you're unhappy with them after month 4. After your case, in your argument, you'd have to put up with them for a following 8 months, and you wouldn't be able to do anything about them unless you could recall, which could happen whether it's 1 year or 2 years. So that argument seems a bit redundant because it's 8 months where they're sort of having whether they could sort of be a tyranny. So surely, again, you should be pushing for 6 months. I keep going back to this argument because it's almost like you're not making the argument again. So I've made several points about why we can be more professional, more consistent, more ambitious, and I haven't heard any of those be addressed. All I've heard is democracy and scrutiny, please, and we've got that on both sides.
Right. I can just say here, you can either have a closing statement each, or you can scrap it out as you want to now.
Just quickly, Damien, I've just had a word from Nate. He says you can keep it going if you want to. So.
Oh, awesome. Perfect.
So, yeah.
More questions from the members?
Do another 2 hours.
Go on then, Reese. Give it to him.
Give it to him.
I've sort of forgotten what he said now. Which is a bit of
I said I made a bunch of arguments which completely haven't been addressed. I've addressed your arguments. Your argument only seemed to be democracy, scrutiny, mer democracy.
Well, I think democracy is the most important point. I think democracy does tend to be the most important point.
Come on.
Democracy, by virtue, creates things such as professionalism, stability, right? That's how you get those things, right? If you have elections every year, you are obviously going to have chairmen who are thoroughly checked and who are professional, because if they're not professional, they know that within a year they're gone. Right, and the other that was the other point Seb made. He said, if after 4 months you have a chairman, let's look at this situation. After 4 months, you have a chairman who's doing a terrible job, you know, but they can't recall him. Okay, that's the situation Seb described, which is a plausible situation, right? If that happens, under my proposal, you keep that chairman for 8 months. Under Seb's proposal, you keep that chairman for 20 months. Right? Now, I agree, neither of those situations are ideal, but which of those situations seems better? If you can't recall the chairman, you have them for 8 months or 20 months. Now, 8 months is surely better.
If somebody's bad and they're letting the members down, you can get 5%. We're not talking about 50%.
You're the situation you described.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was if you can't recall them. So we're talking about that situation, and if you can't recall them, you have 8 months or 20 months. It is that simple.
No, look, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Can you just unpack that a little bit more? Because I'm just a bit confused to what you just said there, Reese, or Seb, whoever wants to take it.
So the argument I was making is you've got the 1 year term, you've got the 2 year term. Let's say that you have recall in both situations. The recall isn't achieved. And after 4 months in both hypotheticals, the recall isn't triggered. You're unhappy and you want to get rid of the chap. Would you say that's fair, Reese?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Reese is making the argument that 8 months to put up with someone is better than 20 months. That's right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If we're saying put up with them, there's a difference between you personally disliking them and a plurality of members disliking them. If you don't like them, that's one opinion at the end of the day. And you might hate this guy with everything in your heart. But if it's just you, you shouldn't have the right to get rid of them on your own merit. It should be a democratic decision. All you need is 5% to get rid of them. If they don't achieve the recall, you have to ask yourself this question. Why couldn't you get just 5% of members to agree with you? The question then falls to, is it me that just dislikes him, or is it everyone else? If it's obvious that everyone dislikes them, they're doing nothing, they're letting everyone down, they haven't achieved their manifesto promises, we don't like them, then I think you can get 5%. If you can't, then who's going to take over? If you can't get people who are experienced enough to just get 5% of bloody members to come out and vote or sign a petition, a secret petition, might I add, then how effective are you going to be as a future chairman? Let's say you want to take over after this. If you can't get 5%, I really question your ability afterwards to run the party better than this current chairman, who you perhaps just personally don't like.
Well, that is exactly what happened under Jamie. We had that.
Before you go on that, can I just ask one thing? Getting 5%, a massive advantage for that would be able to send an email via YI. I'm guessing the chairman isn't obliged to send out an email whether he should be recalled or not, because that would be, quite frankly, retarded.
The chairman is not a dictator. The chairman is not a dictator. It does not have, as far as I understand it, they do not have the ability to just veto an email. So if the, let's say, worst case scenario, all the exec are voted in and they all turn horrible and they're all duplicitous, then that would just, you could still recall them, obviously.
So what would be the avenue for like a normal person who wants to remove the chairman? How would they reach the members by email who aren't on Facebook?
You can't reach them by email unless the executive support it. And of course, the executive are
50% support.
Yeah, the executive are likely to back the chairman. So what you have to
hold
do,
on. No,
that's very true. And
I disagree with that fundamentally.
You can disagree after I'm done. Okay?
By all means.
So Damien's question was very specifically, how can the members get that 5% for a recall? And that's difficult because in Hub, you know, sometimes we have had in the past where Hub hasn't in its entire membership had 5% of the wire membership. So generally the way it's been done before is by messaging people on Facebook one by one, which is a slow process. It can be done, but it's slow. It's it's inefficient. Okay. There is no mechanism for the wire members or the membership for a recall. And, you know, probably rightly, because that's a very, you can't have any odd member emailing every single member in the country because he doesn't like what Steve, the chairman, is doing. Okay. But what you do have is if the exec want to email everyone because the exec don't like the chairman, they can email the membership themselves. But generally, you're going to find that the exec are broadly supportive of the chairman. Okay, that tends to be the case. Not always, of course, not always, but that tends to be the case, right? Even if there's a terrible chairman like we saw with Jamie, the exec still support. Okay, because
Jamie is not going to be happy if he sees this.
No, probably not, but that's fine. Jamie doesn't like me anyway. So I would argue that recall is very difficult to achieve. In the worst case, like I said, killing babies. If the chairman's killing a baby, you're going to recall them. Okay, it's very simple.
The police are going to recall him back to prison.
Well, yeah. If the chairman is doing a terrible job by breaking the law or stealing money or just doing awful things, yes, you can recall him. That's what recall's for the absolute terrible worst case scenario. But if the chairman is doing a mediocre job, they're not that great. They're not, they're not killing babies, but they're not the best chairman in the world, and they're not really doing anything.
Like if they never put on a conference or anything like that, exactly. They just sat on their ass.
Yeah, they might comment on Wire Hub once a week, and they attend a monthly meeting, and that's all they do, right? If you're that chairman, you want to get rid of them. But the average member wouldn't necessarily be motivated enough to do recall. Recall is for the worst case scenario, and that's great that we have recall for that. But the reason you have elections, I don't see elections just as a way of getting rid of the bad people. It's a way of selecting the best people. Okay, that's what elections are for. So if you have this mediocre chairman, you can't get rid of them by recall, which is the situation we were describing. That's very possible. That's happened in the past. Okay, if you have that situation, after 1 year, you can elect somebody better. You can elect somebody with a better vision, with more free time, with more radical ideas for the youth wing, right? After 1 year. If you have a 2-year term, you have to put up with this mediocre chairman for 2 years, and you can't recall them. That's bad. That's really bad. That stagnates the growth of our youth wing.
Just a point on the recall, and then I think we should have some other questions. So first off, just 50% or 51%, I guess, of the executive would need to agree to send an email out. Regional chairman can send emails. Messages could be sent around on Facebook. Pages people can mobilize. And if you're somebody who thinks, you know what, I'd do a better job than the person in power, and you're telling me you can't get 5%, then perhaps you shouldn't be in power either, because you might perhaps be just as mediocre as a chairman. I think that's almost a litmus test. That's all I'd say, because I think this point is rather dull. The question is not about recall. It's, although we both agree it's there, the question is about professionalism, consistency, stability. I think that happens with 2 years. You think that happens with 1 year. There are a number of areas I think we still need to cover. Is that right, Damien? Or
well, we have 3 more questions, I think, and then we can have closing statements if you like.
I haven't prepared, but yeah, let's do it.
That's good. I love it when people don't prepare. That's even better.
Okay. What are the questions?
All right. So the next question we have from another YI member. I'll ask this to you, Seb. Considering a chairman can be removed by a vote of no confidence, what's to stop the term being extended again? And presumably again and again and again.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Considering a chairman can be removed by a vote of no confidence, recall, yes. What's to stop the term being extended again? As in, next it's 4 years, next it's 5 years,
As in another referendum? I don't think I understand the question. A vote of no confidence wouldn't add to his term.
So the point the question is making is, if your argument is, if there's a bad chairman, the members can remove him by recall. Therefore, why don't we have a 4-year term, a 5-year term, a 10-year term, a 50-year term?
Yeah, what's to stop that happening, essentially?
Yeah.
So I'm really not sure I understand. So somebody is disliked, they get voted out. I highly doubt they'd get voted back in. Maybe I'm missing the ball entirely.
So the point is, the point they're making is, your argument, Seb, is we have recall, so it doesn't matter if there's a 2-year term, because if somebody is doing that badly, they can be recalled. That's the crux of your argument. So what
that measure is in place if they were terrible, of course.
Yes. So what this person is saying is, by that logic, why can't we have a 4-year term, a 5-year term, a 7-year term, a 10-year, 50-year term? Because it's the same argument. That's the point they make.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's almost the 6-month argument flipped on its head, isn't it? Is that where you're coming from?
Yeah.
I think 2 years you have a number of elections, which is flipping your argument on the head. 4 years just seems a bit ridiculous, especially at this young age when everyone's sort of going from from college to university,
I thought European youth wings were right to do 4 years. That's what you were saying a minute ago.
So one has 5 years, all the others have 2 or 3. And I'm not saying we should do everything they do. I'm saying they're headed in a different direction to what they are than we are by having longer terms. Perhaps we should look into that. Most of them are 2 years. If they are mostly 5 years, I think that was wrong. The point I would make, the reason I would say it's different, is people are going from secondary school to sixth form, from sixth form to either university or for jobs. And these are massive changes. 2 years, you're still in roughly the same places. Obviously, there will be change, but if you're at sixth form, you're coming to the end of your sixth form. If you're at university, you're still at university. If you've just started a job, you're probably still in the job. If you're at secondary school, you're probably still at secondary school. When you start to have 5, 6, 7, 10 years, you may think completely different to how you did 10 years ago. It could be a completely different situation. You could have matured, you could have left the party. It would be different. But when you get to sort of 4 or 5 years, you have people in the exec who also say, you know what, I've had fatigue, I can't be bothered, and they give up. 2 years is a very reasonable compromise between having democracy every single year and having, people get fatigue and then just leave. I think, although the argument is quite arbitrary because there's not a great deal of difference between 18 months and 2 years and 2 years to 2 years and a half, I think the naturally best point would be 2 years. I think that's fair.
You want to respond to that, Reese?
Yeah, I think that if we're looking at it from that point of view, if we're looking at it from the point of view that 2 years is the right natural balance, that there's something wrong with 1 year, I just don't agree, because I think we've done 1 year, we've looked at it, we've seen how it works, we've elected Nate, and it does work. We
at the moment,
so many things. Oh yeah, but it's always worked. It's always worked.
But the policy is not that it's working now. We should keep it going. The policy is we should help people in the future. We want chairmen in the future to have ambitious changes, to be able to push through, and to give them every ability to live up to their promises. I mean, you talk about a tyrant and how we get rid of them. I'd say the best thing to do is, instead of capping someone's arms and making it impossible for them to achieve the promises that they've set out in their manifesto, we should give them the time to do it. Rome wasn't built in a day. A lot of these things can't be done in a day. Do you think? I mean, youth affairs spokesman took what, a year? Was it a year and a half?
Just over a year.
Just over a year. I mean, these things are hard. If you want radical change, which a youth affairs spokesman is, you need to give them time. And a youth affairs spokesman is a classic example.
Yeah, and I think youth affairs spokesman is a fantastic example. What happens when you've got a recent renewed mandate? When Nate went to Gerard and Nate said, in my manifesto, I pledge to continue going for youth affairs spokesman. It has been well known among the YR membership that youth affairs spokesman is a key issue for me. I have just been re-elected unanimously, unopposed, on the basis that I will keep pushing for this. Gerard, the YR members support it. Do you? With that power of that mandate, Nate got the change. He didn't get the change on a 2-year term. He got the change on a 1-year term, because a 1-year term gives him a refreshed, renewed, strong, recent mandate.
You'd be absolutely right if he was pushing that from the time he got elected in the 2nd year, in which case, hats off to Nate for just in, 2 months, achieving something so monumental. Absolutely. Round of applause for Nate. That's not what happened. Good man. There we go. Round of applause for Nate. That's not what happened. That's ridiculous. From the moment Nate came in, he was trying to push for this because he knew this was a massive decision. He knew this would be huge. He knew how much it would help us. So from day one, he was talking to people saying, why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? And because of things that were going on with Henry Bolton and with turbulence with our membership and financial problems, he couldn't do that. Another example of why a 1-year term isn't good. Sometimes everything you want to achieve isn't under your control. If there are election problems, if there are financial problems, you have to put your focus to that, and you can't necessarily achieve all of the things you had in your manifesto. By giving someone time, you give them the ability to achieve everything in their manifesto. I don't want a situation in the future, and we've had it in the past, where someone says, these are my 10 promises. They come back to you after a year and said, look, I've made amazing progress with all of them, but because I didn't have the time, because of leadership problems, because of local election, because of lack of finances, whatever it may be, I couldn't do them. If you give them 2 years, you massively increase the opportunity that they can do them. I don't want people coming back to us with excuses saying, I didn't have enough time, vote for me again, I promise I'll do it next time. After 2 years, there's no excuse. If Nate gets a 2-year, just let me finish this point. If Nate gets a 2-year term and he comes back to us and goes, I finished half of it, but I didn't do the rest, we get rid of him. because he's only done half of what he promised. After 1 year, you can convincingly make that argument and say, because of other events which are happening in the party, I couldn't do this, so you should vote for me again. That's going to lead to tyranny. That's going to lead to problems. By giving people that time to be able to achieve what they promised they would, you're improving democracy, you're improving our professionalism, you're doing a huge amount of good for the youth wing.
No, I'm sorry, I don't agree. I don't believe that having more frequent elections is more likely to cause tyranny. That's ludicrous.
Respond directly to what I said. Respond directly to what I said.
I'll let you finish your point.
Sure, but respond directly to what I said.
That's literally what I'm doing. Okay.
What?
So you made the point.
Guys, let's keep it civil, okay?
Yeah. You made the point that having 1 year terms is more likely to lead to tyranny, and I don't agree. I think having 1 year terms.
Why did I say that?
Likely to lead to tyranny, because
you're not addressing my point.
And actually, okay, and I will address the main point you made there. Okay, the main point you made there was, look at what Nate achieved in just over 1 year. Isn't that fantastic? I agree. Yes, that's absolutely incredible what Nate achieved in just over 1 year. But Nate achieved that with a 1 year term in place, because he got re-elected on the basis that he was doing a great job. So let's look at what Nate achieved over his term. To start with, he got rid of Henry Bolton, the leader. Obviously, not just Nate on his own, clearly, but Nate was one of the players in removing Henry Bolton, because he did a fantastic job campaigning against him. Achievement 1, okay? He almost tripled YI membership, right? Achievement 2, amazing. This is all in 1 year still. And then the third big achievement is just after 1 year, he got appointed Youth Affairs spokesman, just after he'd been unanimously re-elected without opposition. Okay, that is because he had a mandate. If you give him 2 years, but as 2 separate 1 year terms with a mandate and an election in between, you give him more power during that second term to drive those changes through. And if, like you said, you have a chairman who has 10 objectives, and at the end of the first year he goes, I've made significant progress on all 10 of those objectives, but I've not yet finished them, then the YI membership can go, well, we can see materially that you've done this. So let's say their commitment is to raise £10,000 for YI. Let's say they've raised £7,000 for YI. My goodness, you've raised £7,000 for YI. That's amazing. If we elect you again, you'll no doubt hit the 10,000 and probably go over it. However, let's say the chairman has raised £500 for YI. Well, you go, well, you're clearly doing a crap job, aren't you? You've raised £500. We're not going to re-elect you because it's plainly, patently obvious that you're not going to meet that in your second term.
But most of the progress isn't quantitative.
Most progress is measurable. Okay, maybe not in as simple terms as the money I just mentioned, obviously. But let's talk about Youth Affairs spokesman. YI members can clearly tell if their chairman is being very active and vocal about youth affairs. YI members can clearly tell if their chairman is regularly seen with the leader. YI members can clearly tell if their chairman is doing well in the media. Okay, these are the progress blocks to building towards building towards Youth Affairs spokesman. Okay, YI members can see that Nate was doing that after the first year, and he regularly updated the members to let them know where he was getting with the Youth Affairs spokesman. They can see the progress, they can see what he's doing. They're intelligent enough to know that he's getting somewhere. So they elected him again for a second term, giving him that crucial, professional, important 2 years you're talking about, with democracy and scrutiny from the members.
Just to respond to that, I would say that most progress isn't quantitative, it's qualitative. What I mean by that is we didn't know the Youth Affairs spokesman was going to happen for certain. We didn't know when it was going to happen until it happened. Nate's been pushing for this for a year and a half now, behind the scenes, with talks, with conversations, with persuasion, pushing. If there was an election a day before it happened, he wouldn't be able to say it's happened. He can only say, I promise I'm getting it done and I'm making progress. And believe me, I think you'd agree that it's not as simple as, look, I've made £7,000 when I want 10. It's really hard to measure that progress. And what's even harder is to see a chairman who has made no progress, who's trying his best to fudge the books to try and show you, look, I've made progress, I promise, just vote for me again and I'll make progress again. That can definitely lead to tyranny, because people call snap elections. They'll say, look, I'm so close. There is no excuse after 2 years. After 2 years, if you haven't done what you said you're going to do, there's no excuse. You've had all the time, you've had the finances, you've had events, but you've had free time. You've had all the possible support you could possibly have, and you haven't achieved it. So you're useless. Bye-bye. That's the best thing I'd say for our democracy.
Okay, don't make it too long, Reese. Go on.
Okay, yes. So I'd sort of make the same point again, is I believe most of the things are measurable. Obviously, there are certain things which can be difficult to demonstrate. But the YI chairman, the example you gave, is, I would argue, a perfect example where the members can see what's happening. because Nate regularly last year, before he was made Youth Affairs spokesman, was telling YI members how he was getting on. I raised it today at the NEC meeting. The NEC gave this opinion. I spoke today to Henry Bolton about this position. I had a meeting with the chairman. Whatever it is that Nate's doing, you can materially see that he is making progress and striving for this change. Okay, yes, it's not as simple as a percent meter. I'm 59% there, the way to getting there. Obviously, it's not that simple. But the members are intelligent enough to tell if their chairman is doing a good job and letting them know about it. Even with,
but you'd admit that can be fudged, right?
I don't think it can be. Well, okay, I think it can be attempted to be fudged, but I think the YI members are intelligent enough to tell that it's being fudged, because they could see their chairman goes, oh yeah, I pushed for Youth Affairs spokes today, and they can see, well, how did you push for it? But no, that's not what happened with Nate. What Nate did is he said, I pushed for it today at the NEC meeting by raising this point that was brought to me by this member. I had a meeting today at this place for this long with the chairman where we made these conclusions. I spoke to the leader today where we said this, discussed this, and he believes this. Okay, Nate was giving specific examples of why and how he was making these changes and making this progress. So it's not as simple as it's done or it isn't. There is a lot of things in between that need to be done. And the other way the YI members can measure that is Nate doing a good job as a pseudo Youth Affairs spokesman, i.e. is he doing the job of Youth Affairs spokesman before he's got the badge, right? And yes, he was. He was doing a good job by talking to the members, by going in the media, by presenting his case, by raising issues about youth affairs. YI members can see that because there's regularly posts on the YI page, in YI Hub, sending out emails, and in the media, okay? If the YI members want to tell if their chairman's doing a good job, they just look at what their chairman has told them. If they're being transparent, as they should be, they will know that they've done a good job or that they haven't done a good job. It is easy to tell.
Okay, shall we move on?
Yep.
I mean, I could respond, but yeah, I think we're running out of time soon.
Okay, so let's move on to the real serious questions. We've got
sarcasm.
A question here from a member, which is PewDiePie or T-Series?
PewDiePie.
T-Series ain't nothing but a bitch lasagna. PewDiePie.
Okay. Another question I have from another YI member is, why have Rhys Coombes and Theresa May never been seen in the same room at the same time?
That's the question we all want to know, Rhys. We've seen through your lies, okay? We've seen through your lies. Why have we never seen you and Theresa May in the same room at the same time? Answer me that.
Because you've got to close the curtains and use the bed sheets, obviously.
What?
I'm not sure what that's insinuating there.
I'll leave you to work that one out.
Okay.
You got to be careful. I might turn into some kind of meme.
Yeah.
All right, then.
I'm gonna speak to what is it, Jake Falconer after this, and I'm gonna get your face cropped on Theresa May's body. It's gonna be brilliant.
Okay. Should we do some closing statements then?
Yeah. Shit. Fuck. All right. Sorry. Get everything in.
Oh,
right.
You swore on my podcast.
Yeah. No, I do apologise.
This is a family-friendly Christian show. I'll have you know.
Christian show. Yeah. Brilliant.
Shut up. Don't undermine the host. Okay. Well, since Sebastian decided to be so rude to me, why don't we start with Rhys first?
Okay, good. You give me time to think. Right, good.
I didn't prepare a closing statement. I didn't.
Oh, shall we flip a coin then? Let's flip a coin.
Let's flip a coin. I mean.
Okay, hold 1 second. I need to get a coin.
I'll just do it. Don't bother. I'll just do it.
Well, Damien's gone. Go for
How's it going, Rhys?
Not too bad, thanks. Not too bad.
Good. Yeah. How's the weather in Weston? Seems quite nice.
Bloody hot.
All right.
Yeah, this time of year.
Believe it or not, I don't actually have a British currency, so it's going to be a euro.
Oh no, this is going to be all over the papers.
Which is kind of traitorous, really, for UKIP.
Can't find a penny, but can find a euro.
So, who wants to go for 50 cents, and who wants to go for the big Pantheon?
I'll go first because it'll.
No, let's do it. Come on, who wants to go for the Pantheon?
Go on, give me the Pantheon.
Okay, right, here we go.
You're loving this so much, Dave.
Pantheon it is.
Pantheon. All right, Rhys goes first.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't prepared a closing statement. I didn't prepare an opening statement, so this should be fun.
Neither did Sebastian, just to make things clear.
There we go. Yeah. So
I was on the pull last. I mean, not the pull, the piss. Sorry, I've got a girlfriend.
No, I believe that the system we have in place at the moment, it works. We know it works. We've seen it work for many years. During the referendum in 2016, YI was active all over the place, producing videos online, action days in the streets, delivering leaflets, giving speeches. Okay, YI was incredibly effective at bringing about Brexit. The same happened in the 2015 general election. The same happened in the general election in 2017. YI is always active. Thanks for that, Seb. YI is always active throughout the country. And that is because we have effective chairmen. Okay? We know that Nate is doing a good job. We've seen it happen. We saw him and a number of others remove Henry Bolton from his position. We tripled YI membership. We built far closer links with the party, all in 1 year. And because he did a great job, precisely because he did a great job, Nathan was re-elected for a second year as chairman. That is because the members want him to have that crucial 2 years, to bring about that change, to keep that professionalism, to drive that radical vision of our youth wing and our party forwards. Okay? It is that simple. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the last thing I would say is this. If you believe that the current system we have is working, if you believe that Nate has done a fantastic job in his first year and is continuing to do a fantastic job after being re-elected with a strong mandate, if you believe that our chairman and our executive council are doing brilliantly as they are, then you should vote to keep the system that got them there. A vote for a 1 year term is a vote of confidence in a radical vision for YI's future. Thank you.
Okay, and you, Seb.
I'm going to keep this quite short and sweet. It appears that the argument here is building on the success we already have or keeping the status quo. It's working fantastically at the moment. Doesn't mean it's always going to be so. We need to be thinking long term as opposed to short term. We need to think how we're going to do in terms of our trend rate. Are we going to grow? Are we going to decline? We need to make the decisions which are important for our future. I think the best way to do that is to give our chairman and our executive potentially all the time they possibly can to achieve their promises. We want to be more professional. We want to be more stable. We want to put into place a long-term path. We want to get respected by the main party. Generally, we want to give our future chairman the ability to do as well in their day as we have done in our day. It's a long-term decision to bring us in line with some of the other Eurosceptic youth wing parties who are all doing 2 years. Why don't we take a leaf out of their book? That sounds like a nice way to finish. A leaf out of their book.
Okay, that's great. So let's wrap this thing up.
Believe in Britain.
Believe in Britain, or alternatively, as I would say, make that great again.
Huzzah.
By the way, that's nothing to do with Luke Nash. I bought that myself.
Okay, right.
I also want to point out that you two are fantastic speakers. I actually didn't expect it to be such a fiery debate over 1 year versus 2 years. So congratulations to the both of you.
And Reese, thanks for debating. I've had a really good time.
Thank you, Seb, as well. We had a good debate.
Great. Okay. Also, I'd like to point out that you can vote now. The polls are open. So I believe all you need to do is check your email. You should have an email from YI telling you the instructions of how to vote. And I think the vote ends sometime tomorrow evening. Is that right, Seb?
I really should know this, shouldn't I?
I know it's sometime tomorrow, but I couldn't find out the exact time. But
I've got a feeling it might actually be noon tomorrow.
Noon tomorrow.
Close sometime in the future.
Tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, well, get your vote out today, just in case.
Nate says 3 p.m. I highly doubt that means today. I imagine it means tomorrow, but for the record, I only said 3 p.m. So vote ASAP.
No, it's got to be tomorrow, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Yeah. I need tomorrow.
I hope so.
Yeah, okay. Well, great. Thanks for the debate, and see you later.
Thanks for hosting, Damien.
Cheers. You want to say the same?
We'll see. Yeah, no, really good job. Cheers. I had a good time.
Good. That's what I like to hear.
You always left me satisfied and smiling, Damien.
Well, that's what I expect.
Right.
Okay. See you later, guys.
Cheers, Damien.
We're just taking it off live, yeah?